Hey folks, this is going to be for the Master of Science in Ecocentric Worldview for January 1st, but I'm just doing a little preview to say that I'll do a bit more research to find out some more of what we don't know about majoritively, even the specialists, and related to, ice ages and the snowball effect of the Earth and the various cycles and how they affect each other. So I'll do more research on that. And I also wanted to say, as this is my last year offering this course, because, people really want to live in an imaginary world and not in the reality world of the things we need to understand on this planet and how we have an impact on it, as I'll tell you a little bit about some of the things that I'll be researching, but also next time I'll also be preparing a list of things I might not get to before the end of this last third year course. So next time I'll present that list along with more information on this subject. When it comes to the snowball effect, which, would have most of the Earth covered with ice, which has happened before, is there's a lot of things we don't understand and how they're linked. There's a lot of astronomical cycles, and they're pretty complex and easier to demonstrate if you guys look up various YouTube videos where there'll be audio-visual presentations to understand these movements. There's at least 7 ways, if not more, that the Earth moves. Aside from moving on itself with its rotation, which is tilted, and even that tilt has a wobble, and going around the sun, and also being going around the moon, or the moon going around it, creating another kind of variation. There's tilts in the inclination of the orbit around the sun. There's going around the galaxy. It has various movements, and we don't kind of necessarily understand everything. And that's just one of the ways that there's cycles that create challenges for life on this planet, and sometimes these challenges balance themselves out, where it creates more favorable conditions. I mean, but even these favorable conditions would be destroyed with, let's say, a volcano, which super volcano, or that we don't have control over, or also people being irresponsible with manipulating climate type of technologies, like sending particles for clouds or microwave or whatever it might be, and just kind of using the biosphere as a lab to experiment with, when all of life is at stake. There's also various other things, like the sun is it has its cycles, but it has random events that as much as we can understand them, they're still, some of it is random. It's not particular cycles that repeat, and even the cycles, they could vary by thousands of years. There's also ozone. We still don't understand. We think we solved this, and this was our great environmental, and I've posted before how ridiculous that is, that we think we understand what ozone does. And there's a lot of ways that the Anthropocene, how we are raping and murdering our own planet as we speak. The Canadian government isn't the only government that shows what David Suzuki said in the 80s, I believe, that economics is a form of mental illness, because they're balancing their budget by funding things that are incompatible to life being suitable, the atmosphere being suitable for life on this planet. Like, they're funding oil industries while they're funding getting away from it or mitigating the outcome of it. And that's an example of how economics creates cognitive dissonance and various forms of mental illness. So the Anthropocene, our actions are creating things like the albedo effect has been changed in a way that right now we are actually in an interglacial stage, but kind of still in an ice age based on the Milankovitch cycles that we still are trying to figure out. So we lost ice that was reflecting sun back out. So that means we are kind of keeping some of that heat, okay? And we're not sure what that's going to do. We're also not sure what our industry's effect on the ozone layer, or on pollutants, or on various molecular agents that are greenhouse gas type factors, and how long they last, we still don't know. And we still don't know how the melting of permafrost is going to have a long-term effect. There's just many things we don't get. We don't know what kind of losing the resiliency of life in the ecological global systems with species that are key species that this planet needs for a stability in the life systems. Maybe James Lovelock would have done more research on this if he wasn't sometimes ridiculed for what he was right about, but it was too different from the norm. It was unorthodox, so we kind of don't pursue the right kind of science when it's unorthodox, except that's what science should be about. But when we lose key species, which we are not one of, the planet could get rid of us, let's say, by a supernatural entity or aliens, as long as they would also be responsible to life on this planet as they remove us and mitigate what we're leaving behind as pollutants, as nuclear power plants that would eventually blow without being managed or repaired or shut down. So a lot of these things is we're not sure how life impacts climate or interglacial periods as well. Especially bacterial life that floats on the ocean, and how acidity levels might change, salinity levels might change, all these things that are our fault when we're meddling with something that was a safe womb for us to live in for so long. So magnetic pole shifts, we're not sure about this. So there's a lot of things I'll research, and I'll try to talk a little bit more about it, and also other topics that are maybe related to our thinking, right? About how we knew things a long time ago that would be irresponsible behaviors for a species that claims to be sentient and sapient, and how it was said a long time ago. Just like, again, what James Lovelock said, David Suzuki said, economics is a form of mental illness. We didn't try to solve this. So we kind of knew it's right, but we don't seem to want to stop experimenting with risks for future generations of our species and all of the entire biosphere. And that's the things we can control. The things we can't control, we still don't understand a lot about, and we should be mitigating for that. We should be saying, what's the plan if there's a super volcano? What's the plan if there's an asteroid? What's the plan to compensate for these effects for a serious solar storm? Especially that a lot of our technology would be shut down by these things. We just don't make decisions as a species, especially with competitive paradigms such as the existence of different countries or of different tribes or different worldviews, things that disconnected from reality, like economics or like religions and things like that, or like politics, or like what we believe are our nations or cultures, and we all believe ours is better than other ones. All these flaws that we've never overcome because we don't undergo our maturation process as a species. All these things make it very hard to predict what's coming in the future, except that what's coming is very likely, that's pretty close to 100%, not going to be good for your kids and grandkids, or even for the next few years for those that are going to live long enough. So again, there's a lot to understand, but if most people are kind of looking up stuff on the internet that is actually totally ridiculous stuff to be interested in during the Anthropocene, which proves again the lack of sentience and sapience and intellectual laziness, then we're not going to get these answers. So when you bring a child into the world, when we already know things are going to get worse instead of getting better, right away, before that child is even born, is automatically you're a bad parent for bringing one in, especially when you don't understand the skill sets you will need to teach those kids, and how to do that. You will need to not be stuck in a full-time job and not be able to depend on your education systems. You'll need to actually do this by learning the things at the same time. When we're not doing this and we're not having these conversations and we're not supporting each other, those that are parents, to actually help do this. It's all still the consumer paradigms, the survival one day at a time, the fear of deviating from the norm and becoming an outcast, and yet still business as usual. And when I say business as usual, I don't just mean this. I mean having children is business as usual, right? It's a pattern that isn't really planned, right? There's no family planning. There's no future planning. And if there is, it's only limited to this family, which is, again, is an isolation kind of thinking. It's not an ecocentric thinking. So you shouldn't have kids if you can't rely on a society to help prepare these kids. And if your country is still in conflict with other countries or other ideologies. So a lot of things recently I had an experience as a volunteer the last few weeks, and it made me decide that it was pretty intense proof of HSD. So I now believe that the species I share DNA with, which is breaking my heart and giving me a lot of shame and disappointment, which means I suffer from species alienation, because it turns out that I'm now raising your levels of inabilities to use the higher functions of your brains due to HSD to 99.96%. So again, this tells me that the concept of humanism is impossible, because we cannot solve our own problems, and we seek to continue to be in denial about this and continue business as usual to keep replicating our species, which is not a key species. It's just one that is very risky for the biosphere. That's how it has meaning. So again, our species has meaning to the biosphere by how destructive it is, not because it lends itself to the concept of life in a positive way. I'll be talking about a lot of these things in an honest way as the doctor of humanics and the specialist of the human condition.